In this video, I'm going to share with you some hopefully useful advice when it comes to the scenario if you cannot pass job interviews. And let me just start by saying that I do believe in luck to pass job interviews. It's just that I don't believe that people pass interviews primarily because of that. Okay? First scenario I'd like to talk about here, there's a huge difference between not being able to pass screening rounds versus not being able to pass final interview rounds. Okay, let me explain. So screening rounds are far more about the cosmetics, making a good impression, maybe having a professional CV, or maybe having a referral for that job interview. I know plenty of people who pass those screening rounds primarily because they had a referral for those occasions, or there are some FAANG companies who advise you to hire someone to write your CV. This is also primarily because those applicant tracking systems could automatically favor you just because they have the right keywords in them, and then recruiters will get biased because the applicant tracking system said, hey, this is a perfect match. And there you go, you could easily see how you are able to pass more easily those screening rounds with a rather cosmetic approach. And of course, if this is if screening rounds is more about impressions, then it's also a volume approach. You have to line up multiple interviews to be able to pass them, until you figure out what it takes and what would be a qualifying scenario. Could be referrals, could be CV, could be having a more positive attitude, or could be all three of them. Okay, and this is in contrast with passing final interview rounds, because final interview rounds, I could correlate people preparing them with actually passing them. Okay, so there it's a more qualitative approach, and if you think about it, it all makes sense, because on the employer side, it's very expensive to run a final interview round, to allocate the time of 5 of their employees, 5 of their best employees even, to hire someone who might or might not be the right choice. So they want to minimize this risk by having this screening round. So this is why screening rounds are impressions, and then in final interview rounds, a qualitative approach. So long story short, which problem do you have? If you have the first one, screening rounds, then focus on those elements. Otherwise, focus on the qualitative approach to prepare these job interviews. Second scenario I'd like to talk about here is, to give an example, I recently worked with someone who was a incredible subject matter expert. He actually managed to pass an interview with Google. I believe it was for either senior, either principal TPM, but he couldn't find the team internally, and basically he couldn't move away from his current role already in a FAANG company. And basically we did a role play, a quick role play, and asked him, hey, why don't you tell me your elevator pitch? Tell me about yourself. And long story short, it was the worst elevator pitch I've heard in at least 1 year. Basically what happened, he performed a readout of their CV. It's just that he did it for 5 minutes straight. So it was incredibly hard to watch. Okay, so long story short here, regardless of how a well-respected professional you are, you still have to do decently well with interviewing skills, Still have to prepare a little bit also on even if you consider these things only cosmetics, they do actually matter. Okay. Third scenario I talk about here is the actual reverse of the previous one I talked about. Recently worked with someone. She was an incredible. She was a pleasure to work with. Incredible candidate to interview in behavioral interviewing field. She was a certified coach, and yet she preferred to still stress on taking coaching sessions, further improving on her interviewing skills when compared to her actual weakness, that is functional expertise. Okay, so long story short, do you know what's your weakness? Do you know what's your actual weakness? Because plenty of candidates ask me, then can you help me on the technical side to prepare the technical interview, when in fact I have absolutely no knowledge on that stuff. So if the functional part is your challenge, then focus on that, right? Remember, during my high school years, I always thought I'm great at mathematics until, my graduation exams were already terrible at mathematics and great at literature. Okay, or the same thing with programming. I always thought I was great at programmer until I had to do it for real. It didn't work out too well. Okay. Number 4 here, we're getting to some interesting stuff. Let me ask you this. Do you enjoy using AI to prepare your job interview? Because if your answer is yes, then I could almost certainly tell you that that's the greatest mistake you could do to prepare a job interview. A reason for saying this is because I was not able to correlate use of AI with any success in job interviews. So simply using AI for job interviews would be a deadly mistake. Okay, so long story short, don't jump on trends. Preparing job interviews, don't jump on trends to generally more speaking, because trends are only that. Until something is confirmed, something is well proven to work, you must stay away from it. Okay. Number 5, motivation. Motivation is critically important both before and during the job interview. So, do you really want the job that you're applying for? Do you really feel motivated and engaged to do this process? Because some people prefer to consider a career change. I didn't expect this to be such a trend, and I didn't expect myself to have such success with people looking for a career change. Okay, so if this is what could motivate you, find what works and adjust your expectations accordingly. This interviewing process is as close as it gets to business for most candidates. So in business, not everything works. You must adjust at some point in time. And finally, quick note here: if you're endlessly looking for jobs in the same company, then the problem could be the company itself. I've had some occurrences of this in the past, and my advice would be to try to find their best competitor. Try to get hired there, and then it will be a lot easier to get hired with your dream company. Right? So hopefully you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.